Hi, thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. I'm Reverend MeeLing, been known by a few names: Reverend MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Lady MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle, Dark Lily, Poison Phoenix, Poison Ivy, Kuan Yin, Common Mountain. Been known by a few names over the years. So today is the 28th of June, 2020. And I am back in my apartment after a few things. Though in specific, I was at the open air rally, pro-Trump sort of thing that was going on in Austin, wearing the outfit I wore. Ish. I mean, by technicalities, my shoes are not the exact same ones that I was wearing, but you can't see my feet. So, nonetheless, that was a lot of fun. It was quite a bit to be able to listen to varying perspectives in regards to not just the aspects in regards to the COVID-19 and the mask aspect, but also in reference to the individual's different experiences, not just during the time of since quarantine, but also certain prior experiences. For example, there was a female who had discussed not just the aspects of her having to wear a mask when working as an employee at HEB and having asthma issues, but also her experiences in regards to the foster care system, as well as being a part of a military background. And, listening to that, it was one of those, today, the 28th of June, 2020, it made me think about certain aspects in regards to what I had tried explaining to people back when I knew them, specifically in Austin, Texas, from 2010 and 2011, although I had been at events in 2012 as well in Austin, Texas. And there were a multitude of individuals that I had met in the lifestyle and the events that I had gone to, who tried to tell me that what I was explaining to them they didn't believe. And I had told them not only what is going on in reference to my daughter because of what happened at McCoy Elementary School, that there are other children who have needlessly gone through that. There are other, and not just in reference to what my daughter went through, but also my son, because of what occurred. And then, needlessly, parents have had to go through certain aspects of what I went through, and what I was doing the best I could to attempt to prevent that from happening to my daughter. And listening to the female today when she was speaking at the Austin State Capitol, I tried explaining to people back when I knew them that you don't understand what goes on and what I'm doing to prevent that as best as I can. And the fact that not only had that female gone through the foster care system, but also with the military background, that goes into the aspects that I had attempted to explain to people in the Austin community back specifically again in 2010, 2011, and 2012. And while there were some people who did understand and knew that I was speaking the truth, the amount of vitriol and constant attacks from, ironically, college students who are taught, think and have an open mind. Not saying that all of the college students I met were in that category of claiming to have the open thought process and yet not being willing to ask questions or to understand either way with a genuine aspect to understand, whether knowing or not having the slightest inclination. Now, there were college students that I had met in those years who they did not doubt necessarily, but they did have questions, and they didn't attack me, whereas the ones I would guesstimate probably more of a certain section of types of degrees. Nonetheless, the ones that I had spoken with that had very much understood where I was at and what I was explaining, while they themselves did not specify their backgrounds in that regard, we did speak about things, and we didn't always speak about in regards to what I was dealing with, of course. And so today, when listening to that female speak, it was one of those, I knew that my daughter and my son were not the only ones who needlessly went through certain situations. I knew that I, as their mom, was not the only parent who really didn't need that additional set of stuff going on. And with the culmination of the aspects of those particular college students saying that they had the right to their opinions, but then would deny me mine. And not just my opinion, but what was going on at the actual time. I had told people back then, while you think that I am being confrontational, believe me when I tell you, I'm not being confrontational. And simply because I was stating fact, that was what some of those college students had thought was confrontation. And I had said back then, where I grew up, where I was born and raised, we did not have a confrontation. I guarantee you that. Where I grew up walking around as a child in the 1980s and 1990s, let me explain something to you so you fully understand. We did not have a confrontation. We were talking. The types of confrontations I know, we did not have. That's not confrontation. Me coming to speak with you or you coming to speak with me. Confrontation is similar to a conversation in the way that I know that sort of thing. And I was told by those college students that I was being confrontational by speaking the truth. I tried explaining. You don't want to know what type of confrontation I know is confrontation. Because confrontation that I know is confrontation, well, there's healthcare issues involved when that's over. And so the preference of just having a discussion with words, I prefer that. I mean, realistically, there's only been very few times that I've had to seek medical attention after a conversation, and that had to do with my now dead ex-husband. Any other confrontation that I had been a part of in an actual conversation sort of way, I walked away perfectly fine. I mean, the worst I dealt with before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 was a ripped shirt and their blood on my shirt. Still mad about my shirt. Just saying. I had bought that shirt. But they ripped it. But I didn't go to the emergency room. They did. Just saying, I didn't go to the emergency room. So, with those individuals in Austin that had wanted to say that I was confrontational. No. Now I can say I'm confrontational. Now I can say that, but not in the conversation sort of way. Irony of thunder and lightning at this point in time. More along the lines of, I've written a few books, and those particular aspects, if inaccurate, we can talk. However, since I know that I can only write in truth, and what other people have written in regards to, for example, today I put out a new journal blog entry. Go check out my website, www.susanmeeling.com. And those words are from, well, the ones that I wrote are from me, but the words from my ex-in-laws are from my ex-in-laws. And so in reference of the female that I listened to speaking today, in the reference I'm giving at this point, what she explained was what I was wanting to prevent as best as I could. I'm sure that she could give more examples than she had given, though it was quite strong for her to be able to make those statements as to what she had endured and survived. And could very much explain to those individuals I knew in Austin, the college students from 2010, 2011, and 2012, how much of what I was stating was reality back then. And there was nothing wrong with me attempting to prevent my children, but also others, from having to endure that. Now, there were other people who had spoken, such as a female who had read some words as far as when she was growing up. She had written in her journal and read it aloud, and she had given experiences in reference to what she watched as a child while growing up, and the things she did to see where we are at this point in time. And when she spoke, I was thinking about all of the guys that are alive today, again, the 28th of June, 2020, who have been around, not just since the events on 9/11 in 2001. Not even just the guys, like an individual I spoke with who remembered the 1993 attack on the East Coast to the World Trade Center, but also individuals that have been around to see what was going on as far as, which that 93 attack was part of Desert Storm, by the way, but also in reference to the guys who have been around knowing in person at that time in regards to Vietnam, the Korean War, the conflicts in between, the battles in between. Not just that, but there are still people who are alive to this day that have been around during World War II and World War I. Not as many, but there are some. And so as I stood there and listened to her speak, about that, it was one of those, how many, in my thoughts, how many of those guys could hear those words and feel that and know that and genuinely want to see that change in a positive and bettering way? Couldn't just be me. Not at that event, and not anybody who could have heard that at all. And then there was another female. She had spoken in reference to how she had immigrated here and how she had seen certain things and overcame certain things and appreciated certain things. And I tried explaining to people again, and this is throughout my time in the state of Texas mainly, that the people who legally immigrate to the United States of America go through quite a bit. And while I understand there are a lot of people who very much, the United States of America's Constitution and Bill of Rights, people flock to this country because of those freedoms. And so people who want to take that away because of their feelings being hurt by words. I mean, there's a couple that I knew over the years, and the male actually had immigrated here legally from Africa, and I think he's in his late 20s, early 30s, and he remembers, from what was explained to me, him and his mom being in an area with firearms in their faces because of the radicalized Muslim terrorists that were going around from village to village. And he earned his education, and she earned her education, and they worked together individually, but together with the people that they knew before they had met, as well as after they met, to better their lives, to make things better for not just themselves, but their children. And so the process to get here, I mean, not the only ones. There's a female in particular I knew over the years, and her parents legally immigrated here from Mexico. And the paperwork and all the stuff that was needed to be done to accomplish that, and then to maintain, so that way they could genuinely prosper in life. My own great-grandparents legally immigrated here on my biological father's side. It was to escape Mao Zedong. My great-grandfather was a Cantonese, and my great-grandmother was a Mandarin. And I learned from their discussions what they escaped at those times, what they survived, what they overcame. And so listening to the female today, it was one of those, I've tried explaining that to other people. Not all of those, mainly the aspect of my great-grandparents, but I know that others have those similar sorts of experiences. Maybe not the exact same way, but in different ways where it is very similar to do better and be better in life. And then there was another guy who was speaking about his personal experiences and all these different things. And he had many, many experiences that he could have gone on over, and he slightly touched different ones. And he himself had brought forward quite a bit of information. Another guy wound up discussing how he had been discriminated against because of his political standpoints and his views. But he was able to get employment despite that, which is great. Hopefully he has newer clients that are lining up out the door to be taken care of in that regard, so that way, you know, he himself can continue on as well. And so I understand that there are people over the years that didn't want to listen in certain references, and then others that paid attention because they understood. In this era, again, today is the 28th of June in 2020, there is so much in the history of the world. There's aeons of different events that have gone on. And the ability to overcome so many different things to genuinely have a better life should be paid attention to. Appreciating the goodness that there is, the actuality of so many advances. I mean, there were days where there not only weren't airplanes, but there weren't even cars or motorcycles. Well, technically I should say motorcycles or cars. There were days where a unicycle was considered out of this world. There were days where people actually carried stones on their backs to get buildings made, in comparison to the cranes and the lifts and all that sort of advances that we have today. So, while yes, are there certain things that aren't necessarily ideal? Okay. But there's a lot of ways to genuinely bring betterment in a peaceful way. Yes, it's a rhetorical question. And so, and then there were the aspects of the prayers being Sunday and all, and the actual ability to gather together and discuss openly, not just the different individuals who spoke. I mean, because there were others. There was a guy from Cedar Park who had discussed what's going on there. And there was a point in time when my son, my daughter, and I lived in Cedar Park and was doing everything possible. That was the first place that I had moved my son, my daughter, and I to after the stuff began. Because of McCoy Elementary School of Carrollton, Farmers Branch Independent School District of Carrollton, Texas. And that particular individual was discussing various aspects in regards to what I wound up dealing with in the board meeting at Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District in May of 2020. And I had told people in Austin about what happened at that board meeting. And yes, do I understand that the board members were attempting to intimidate me by saying the Our Father prayer instead of, or at minimum with, or at minimum instead, but could have been with the Pledge of Allegiance? That did occur. I know that there's video of it. And it didn't intimidate me. The school district did not know that I had my reverendship. The school district did not know the way I was raised by a deacon as my biological mother and a trustee as my biological father, going to church as often as I did at Old Tenet Presbyterian Church in Tenet, New Jersey. Nor did they know I was the first live baby Jesus that drive-through nativity had in over 10 to 15 years. They didn't know that, so I wasn't offended in the slightest as far as saying the Our Father prayer. What I was offended by was the fact that they didn't have the human decency, or I should say the patriotism, to at minimum say the Pledge of Allegiance, which also in turn proved my point in reference to the treatment of those with military backgrounds. So I listened. I paid attention. I'll forget stuff. But doing this initially, I got that. And so, yeah, and I sang the national anthem. That hurt. Mainly because of holding the microphone. But that's my issues with technology. But that shows how patriotic I am to deal with being electrocuted while holding a microphone that has a metal encasing, which, last I checked, metal is a conductor of electricity. And so, for individuals who caused problems to my Medal of Honor art project maliciously, how's that patriotism now? Oh, my patriotism is stronger than it already was? Okay. If that's considered confrontational. There you go. Have a good one. Comment, like, share, and subscribe to my official YouTube channel. I'm Reverend MeeLing. Have a good one.